Ben showed up at the base holding Ship, patting their head, and Max was looking mad, at least at first, until he saw the ship was looking a bit down. He'd apologized to Max and Rook for being a bit late. Ship's been a bit down lately, without Gwen around, and so he tried a bit of extra playtime to help lift his spirits and lost track of time. Rook suggests that perhaps a ride in the proto truck would help him to feel better, to which Ben says so long as Max agrees to letting him take Ship on patrol, and Max gives the go-ahead. The two of them then head on out and start chatting while Ship was looking around inside the truck, curious because of the new technology he hadn't gotten to play with yet. They start to get on the topic of the legends surrounding Ben, and Rook says that there are many interesting stories on the extranet forums. Ben tells him some are true, some not so much. Rook asked if Alien X was actually something that was made up by someone on the forums to mess with people, and Ben responds that Alien X is real, though it's best not to bother them for trivial matters such as simply to show they exist. Rook was confused by that, asking were they not simply a transformation for Ben, to which he responds Alien X is made up of three, himself, Bellicus, and Serena, and that they had an arrangement going where he'd help them with their issues in exchange they would help him with the situation when it called for it, though because of how powerful they are, he doesn't like to bother them. Ben then spots someone with a backpack tethered to a phone and tells Rook to pull over as they get out to follow the guy. He takes notice of them and tries to blast at them, which only excited Ship since it was something new he hadn't gotten to play with yet, as he bounced up and down, and Ben told him that he's gotta catch him first. The guy then tries to run them over with his vehicle as he drives off, trying to get away, and Ship then growls at him. Ben then pets the mechamorph on the head, telling them time to stretch out and go for some exercise. Ship barked hearing that, and Ben tossed him into the air as he changed into his spacecraft form, letting Ben on board as they chased after the guy. Rook tried to cut them off in his own vehicle, making them swerve around a bit, but they'd managed to stabilize and keep going, as Rook then changed his vehicle into its own spacecraft form, and the two chased after them. Opening up a communications channel to Ben, Rook then suggests taking out their tires, to which he'd said good idea, he and Ship would take the front, he hit the back. Ship pulled ahead before turning around, and he and Rook blasted out the tires, making the dude lose traction as he crashed and tried to flee but was arrested. The engine in his car sounded off and they opened the hood as an Austinian escaped. It then messed with the guy's backpack, releasing another one as the two began zapping him over and over again. Ben tells Rook that Nostinians are vindictive of those that try to hurt them or their friends, but in general are friendly and just want to play. There's no need to try to fight against them, as he walked over and kneeled down to talk with them. Ben showed the two of them his badge and told them he was there to help, asking if they had any more friends that needed them, and the two began to seemingly have a conversation with one another, as really only Ben's version had ever been known to say anything in any known language. After a moment, they then nodded to him and pointed before starting to take off. Ben whistled for Ship, who had merged with the guy's backpack, curious how it worked, and he'd let go, coming over barking his name. Ben tells Ship to fetch, so he barked and attached himself to the guy's car and drove away. He then tells Rook to follow them in the truck form. We don't want to startle them or move too fast. Rook then followed the two Nostinians as Ben had climbed in and waved to them so that they could see it was him following and not the guy who was still in cuffs and who'd tried to get away while they could. They continued following down to the pier storage, where they'd seen them going under one of the doors as they wait for a moment, though Rook asked why. Ben says that's why, gesturing to Ship, who was coming back now. He'd stopped the car and shown Ben his armor set, and barked in response, with Ben telling him that he was a good boy, patting his head as he demerged from the car, and then put the armor on. Then the three headed on inside to help the Nostinians. We see them banging on some sort of glass tubes that each had another of their species in it, trying to help them get free, but not really having any luck. Though some guys then absorb them into their suit, and the tanks on their shoulders light up as they fight off another that was trying to sneak up on them. Though another then used their suit to hold them in a sort of energy cage, as a man walks in and says that this better be worth interrupting their workout, and Ben Ben says that he should have known it'd be Fistrick. Rook asks who that is, and Ben says that he's the son of a man who once did the same thing these guys are doing now, and was a former enemy of Max. Rook nods and pushes a button on a device of some sort that lets them out of the cage. Ben tells Rook to break the cases on the suits as they begin to fight against Fistrick and his guys, breaking free those on their suits' tanks as they did so. This got the gang leader mad as he took off running and jumped into a hatch as he appeared at the controls of a big metal suit as he stepped on Chip in the process. Fistrick asked if Ben was gonna cry now that he'd stepped on his little doggy, but Ben smirks, telling him that he just made a big mistake, confusing him, as circuitry patterns began moving their way up the leg of the suit, and then began spreading to the rest of the suit as the main hatch opened up and he was ejected out, crashing into the ceiling before dropping back down in pain. Rook suggested freeing the Nostinian from the tanks on the mech, and Chip ejected the tanks as they fell to the ground and broke, freeing more, and those that were free continued trying to free their friends, with Chip then dropping the mech and attaching himself to the big machine instead and began ejecting the tanks as they began cracking and freeing the rest of the kidnapped aliens. The Nostinians all began to chatter about what to do next, and Ben tells them there's no need to thank them as it's all part of the job, but one of them showed up with part of a broken metal spike and uses their electricity to carve off the top of it before putting the hollow ring that was now left of it onto Chip's head, as they all began picking him up and carrying him around, tossing him up into the air like they were celebrating and he was their king or something, making Ben laugh as Chip just said his name, sounding confused.